Hey good people, and welcome back to the channel. I just finished watching episode 4 of Naked and Afraid Apocalypse, and if I had to give this episode a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a solid 4. In my opinion, this episode had a lot of filler scenes, courtesy of the weather, and there were several scenes throughout the episode that just came off as too good to be true. Now over the course of this video, I will share my thoughts on the important happenings, followed by my thoughts on the remaining teams. So without any further delay, let's jump right in. The first important happening from this episode would be the weather. After several days of extremely dry weather, the rain came, and as the saying goes, when it rains, it pours. And in this very episode, every team's shelter kept most of the water out while retaining a lot of heat. That is, every team except Steven, Frank, and Alexa. The closest thing that Team Steven had to a suitable shelter were 2 abandoned vehicles that had missing doors and holes on the roof. So while Team Steven didn't get completely drenched when they were in the vehicles for shelter, those vehicles did nothing to keep the team members warm. The members of Team Steven were then spotted with repurposed blankets that helped keep them warm, but their shelter nearly flooded several times due to the rain. On the flip side, Wes and Steve had one of the best shelters for the rain, which meant that all the work that they did to shore up their shelter actually paid off. The next important happening would be Teal overcoming her eye injury. Just as I predicted in last week's video, Teal wouldn't have to be med-tapped due to her eye injury. In fact, Teal made a full recovery, and one would wonder how Amber would have fared if she had followed the advice of medics and took it easy while her eye healed. And the final important happening from this week's episode would have to be one of the most coincidental and bizarre series of events in the history of Naked and Afraid, and of course this is just my opinion. Hear me out on this. On last week's episode, we see Steven, Frank, and Alexa in high spirits as Frank nabs an impala and feeds his team members. Up until this part of the challenge, none of the other teams had anything of substance to eat. But in this episode alone, every team somehow finds food after many days of starving and being on the brink of tapping out of the challenge. Let me explain. The most realistic event from this episode would have to be Joe's discovery of food. Joe claimed that he had been checking Amber's trap for several days with no luck, but on this particular day, he finds a very impressive catfish. Could this have happened? It's extremely possible, but the other 2 examples scream interference on the part of production. Wes and Steve spent most of their time in this episode fishing from a watering hole and failing to catch anything. Then after a day of raining, Wes and Steve just happened to stumble across a Nyala that was dying from something, and they had to take it out as misery. And don't get me started on Teal stumbling across a dead kudu that was over 200 pounds. It turns out that this kudu had only been dead for a few hours, but the catch provided enough meat for Waz and Teal to make it to the next stage of the challenge. Now, could the Nyala and kudu have died of natural causes in the middle of nowhere? Very possible. But in the same area, around the same time, and survivalists who haven't eaten anything in over a week just happen to stumble across them? Something about this smells foul, and I get it. If the cast members tap, then there won't be a show. But on the flip side, if these type of scenes are being staged by production, then does it take away from the authenticity of the show? This is just some food for thought. Now let's move on to the remaining teams, and I'll start with the strongest and work my way down. After seeing this week's episode, the strongest team has got to be Wes and Steve. They have the best shelter out of the other teams, they just scored a big game animal, and they have a reliable source of food in a watering hole that they haven't tapped into just yet. As it stands, I think Wes and Steve stand the best chance of making it to the end of the challenge without any issues. Next, there's Waz and Teal. With Teal recovering from her injury, with the shelter keeping most of the rain out, and with their team getting their much-needed big game animal, I think that the sky is the limit for Waz and Teal. I put Waz and Teal below Wes and Steve because Waz and Teal had to throw away some of their food due to the weather spoiling it. On the flip side, Wes and Steve got to save all of their food due to their decision to cook their food inside of their shelter. The next team is the one-man show, Good Old Joe. Joe may be a team of 1, but he has a great shelter, he just got fed, and he's determined to see the end of the challenge. I believe that Joe's chances of getting more food at his current location are slim to none, and I think that Joe will continue to stay at this location until it's time to migrate. And when he decides to migrate, I think he will try to join Wes and Steve because their camp is the closest to his location. But until that day happens, I believe that Joe will do whatever it takes to stay in the challenge. And lastly, there's the team of Steven, Frank, and Alexa. Last week, it seemed like this team was living the high life and enjoying the fruits of Frank's labor. Sadly, with 3 team members, there wasn't a lot of foresight from anybody on the team when it came to shoring up the shelter in the case that it ever rained. And as a result, Steven, Frank, and Alexa got caught with their pants on the ground. With the weather taking away their fire, soaking up all the firewood, and preventing them from sleeping, I have a feeling that somebody from the team might crack and tap out if things continue to get rough. I think that person will more than likely be Alexa. Alexa has the fewest naked and afraid challenges out of everybody else on the team, and it seems like Frank and Steven haven't been as negatively impacted by the weather as she had been. I'm not giving an official prediction on Alexa tapping out of the challenge, but I do feel that things will get worse before they get better for this team. But this marks the end of my review. Feel free to leave all comments below in the comment section, and I'll be sure to reply to everybody. Until next time, stay tuned and stay safe. Peace.